leave my thing on. Hey guys, I hope you're well. You're watching the Talkwoods. It's me, Nat Rich again, and I am joined by 3 people today, but you only see 2 because one's having a technical drama right now. There we go. As I say it, here we are. Just as I was saying, one's having a technical drama. One is not having a technical drama anymore. One is here. Hello. Perfect.
Hello.
So today's show, we're going to try and bring some fun and some humor into the subject of real communication. So we're going to talk about things that are awkward in the sense of the subjects of conspiracy at the moment, the awkward subjects with the partners, the awkward subjects with our friends about how we truly feel, because we know how difficult it is, and it really is tricky out there right now to express how you truly feel. But I reckon these 3 have got some experience, as including myself, on speaking their truth. So I'm gonna pull in their expertise. I'm actually noticing, I don't know why. I don't know if am I still looking yellow? Do I still look yellow? No. I've got like this golden glow. I don't know. I'm liking it, but there's nothing else on, so I don't know what it is. I don't know what I've done, but I like it. Okay. So I will get back to the show and start looking and thinking about my ego. So today I am joined with Angie. Angie came on our last show about rejection and came up with some good chat on there, and I'm going to have her back as much as possible, as much as she'll join us. Angie does some coaching stuff. Do you want to kind of give yourself a quick intro, Angie, of what you're up to, just so people can have an idea of what you do?
Sure, I'll try and keep it short and brief. So I'm a confidence and career success coach. I do one-to-one coaching with executives, and I do group coaching with any level of seniority. And fundamentally, I would honestly say that the main bulk of what I do is just enable people to be better communicators, because pretty much everything comes, as far as I can see, comes down to communication and willingness to take action, but that goes hand in hand with being willing to speak your truth. But how people say it in a way that isn't riddled in judgment and isn't coming from a place of belittling other people is where conflict generally comes from. So today is very aligned to my job, should I say.
Yes, perfect. And that's exactly why we've got you on. So I found Angie because I stalked on LinkedIn. I wasn't on LinkedIn for, very much, but when I was always seeing Angie's videos pop up, and they were amazing. So I reached out and made a new friend. So she's one of my only social media buddies. She made it through the net. And then we've got Sasha on. So you will be seeing Sasha lots more, and you've already seen him 2 times, I think, already. And this is your 3rd? 2 times, yeah. So Sasha is a friend of Charles's, and Charles, who's one of our regular co-hosts as well. And Sasha runs a men's circle. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that? Because we know we had a show on it the other day from the kind of toxic masculinity, but go into kind of what you do and just express that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm also making it short. I think I'm running a men's circle, which is one part of it. I'm running a project which is called Fulfilled Man. So I do coaching with men, and I help men to live a more authentic life, whatever that means for them, in a way that I think when you do that and when you start doing that, becoming more real, maybe also with communication, and we'll go into that today, becoming more real with yourself and with your environment, it actually becomes more healthy. And that's a big issue when it comes to men. This is what I do.
Yeah, that's what you do, and you do it very well. I've met 3 of your friends now that are all in your group, and they all speak highly of you. So
thank you for doing that work.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, from all the women out there, Sasha, we love you. Thank you.
That lights up my ego.
There you go. It's fine. We can all fluff the ego. Do you know what I was saying just before we jumped to you, Julianne? I was thinking the other day, I was walking the dog after I'd done the show with Sasha and 2 of his other friends, sorry. And I thought, all the women out there are saying, where are these guys? Where are these hot guys? I managed to literally bring in 3 lovely looking guys talking about their emotions and their feelings, open, vulnerable. And I was like, if I can do that in a lockdown, I can't wait till we get back out there. Till we're back out, and then I can be bringing them in the real world. But I do need to request single amazing hot guys, because they're all taken. But other than that, I think
we're all taken, yeah.
Yeah, they're all taken. That's it, done. I keep getting people that are taken. I'm like, there's something there. I think maybe I'm emotionally unavailable in some way, probably. So
when you come to Berlin, I feel like there are more of them here.
Yeah, well, when Boris has lifted the lockdown, that'll be another one of the locations that I'm going to try and escape to. So, Julianne, who has been with us loads of times, I always, the shortest and sweetest way to say Julianne comes on when we talk about sex, but today she's coming on for a different reason. And this is real communication. Julianne runs amazing workshop spaces. I will let you tell them what you do. Go for it. You say what I do.
Yeah, the workshops are like 6-week courses, and every week we dive into a different topic of, for example, boundaries, desires, masturbation, orgasms, and it's very much about like communication, of like, how do we communicate? And before we communicate, we need first find out what do we actually have to communicate. So, which starts with an honesty towards ourselves and honesty towards others. And this is what we're basically, I guess, enabling other people to do in the workshop. So enabling to find their own answers about their sexuality, and then listening to others, and therefore learning from each other to piece together this puzzle of our ever evolving, mysterious sexuality.
I love that. See how you always say it better than I do. Ever-evolving, mysterious sexuality. So, we are going to get into the subject of communicating with ourselves first and foremost, because until we're really communicating with ourselves, like Julianne just said about how we really feel, that whatever we're going to give someone else is a watered down, filtered, unprocessed version of us, which is not healthy because we don't get the desired outcome. So a lot of the times when we meet and greet people, or we show up in relationships, we show up in a way that we feel comfortable with, and we kind of avoid most of the intimacy. We like to kind of just have this sales version of us on sale saying, hi, this is the new rosy version of me, but we don't really give them our true selves, because that's the awkward area that we have to go into. So, in terms, actually, just before I carry on, has someone got me on a little bit loudspeaker in the background? Because I can kind of hear something in the background. I don't know if it's myself because someone's got it on their computer, or whether it's, I don't know, whether it's a speaker or not. Can anybody else hear it?
We mute ourselves while you're talking, Nat.
Yeah, try muting yourselves and see how we go. If you try muting yourself, Julianne, I think as well. I think it's that one. I think it's the background of that one. So, Sasha, okay, perfect. Oh, now I don't know who to ask. I'm like, oh no. Okay, so we are going to go into the area of self-talk. And I want each of you, if possible, if you can talk about a way in which you realized the kind of conversations you have with yourself, and the kind of connections that you have with yourself, whether you do mirror work, whether you, journal. How do you communicate with yourself? What does that even mean? And kind of how do you express that as well? So we'll start off with Sasha.
Right. I think the first thing I started to really become more aware of the inner talk and the self-talk was with meditation and mindfulness, in a way, in sitting in stillness, and that was still up to this day a very important element to me. And the other very important element is really journaling. You mentioned it. I do it on a daily basis, I would say, more or less. Some days I skip, but this is I would say the most important element. Meanwhile, because I really it's not only kind of realizing what is actually there, but also having the document, and then the chance to look back. And what I realized is also that topics may come up again and again and again and again. But if I wouldn't kind of write them down and journal it, I would forget about it, because I would probably get lost in the process a little bit. Meditation, sitting in stillness, and journaling are the two things that really work for me. Looking inwards, and maybe I leave it there for now, because I would say that one more thing that I could add, but is not so much inwards, it's more outwards, is also with close people in my environment. So getting the feedback, really searching for the conversation, for the exchange. These things, I would say.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I was going to say call, and then I was like, oh my God, I'm on mute. Muted myself. So I am going to jump to Julianne next. Julianne, what's your form of communication with oneself?
Great question. So journaling as well. And I have, though, over the past years, really, looked into internal family systems and transactional analysis, and that there's basically this child I, the parent I, and the adult I. And in family systems, it goes even further. There's a protecting bit, and so there are more. And like everyone has this basically internal family of like inner judges or inner critics, but also there is a self within us or within me that is like that I've really come to talk to, and that jumps in situations where I'm just like emotionally distraught and I'm triggered, and I almost like I can't handle myself anymore, and I'm like caught in this. And then I have this real strong voice coming in, and I find that often when I journal, like these voices are talking to each other, and I just let them spill out on the page. And then, or sometimes when I walk also, just like this adult I or the self comes in, it's like, I've got you, I've got your back. And for this adult I or the self to witness the anxious child that hasn't gotten enough love from her mom when she was younger, and that was a really traumatizing experience, and to be really seen in that and to have compassion for that is really super powerful for me. You're on mute, Nat.
Haven't quite got used to talking and tech, even though I pretend I do. So and if you can take yourself off mute as well, Julianne, because I'm going to chuck this question very quickly at you. So when you say internal family systems, I've heard of them before, but I'm just doing a recap for you. So if anybody hasn't heard of them, I just want to make sure I'm getting this correct. So you do get there's the three versions. There's the child I, the parent I, and the adult I.
That's transactional analysis.
Sorry. And then there's a way in which you kind of put it down on the paper and you start writing as one of those, and then the others kind of join in. Is that right?
Yeah. And usually it's like this like paranoia, angsty child, like, and then this other, I knew it, you were not loved. And this is the parent I, and then the protector really comes in and says like, yes, but also have you considered the facts? You know, or sometimes it says in transactional analysis that sometimes the child just needs care and attention and witnessing. So when this like angsty child is in a trigger and is like freaking out, that it's just like being held, and I'm like, wow, I see you in this trigger, and I know that it triggers something in you that you experienced in your childhood when you in fact weren't loved, and which was super traumatizing for you, and now this is triggered again, but this person might have nothing to do with it. Mm-hmm. And just like something in me that like really says like, I've got you. And that is so sweet and powerful in that moment, you know, like being like,
being looked after internally.
Yeah.
Love it. Thank you very much for the deeper explanation. If you can pop yourself on mute, that would be great. So, Angie, I would love to fire it over to you, the kind of first time that you really kind of connected with yourself, talking to yourself, and how you do that, and how do you show up with that now?
And just before I say anything about that, it's funny because we've just been talking about transactional analysis. So I think my mum's probably watching this podcast. And she was a TA therapist for God knows how many decades. So she'll be jumping out of a seat at the moment with excitement when she hears all that stuff. But to answer your question, Nat, so we've talked about journaling, which is something that I'm a strong believer of as well. Now we talk about it, I realise that I've let it go a little bit more than I'd like to in the last few months, although I'm a strong believer of it and I've done a lot of it in the past. I think the key thing that works most for me is a high level of honesty when we're in those situations, when we're feeling that negative self-talk going on. So, for example, when we're in a state of fear or anxiety or just discomfort or anything, that triggers a part in our head that will tell us a story that most of the time that story is just a pile of BS. And if we listen to that story as if it's the truth, that's when we get derailed by what it is that maybe we're thinking or what the situation is. So, for example, to put that into context, last time, I mean, this wasn't the first time, like you asked me, but just it's a good example. Not so long ago, probably about a year ago, I was putting out, you've seen the videos that I make on social media, but one was a bit more vulnerable than what I'd made. And then all of a sudden I started hearing all these stories in my head going, people aren't going to like you anymore and you'll never get another client and nobody can see you in that way. And I was like, whoa, this is just fear talking. But if I'd have listened to those voices and taken that story as truthful, then I would have stopped. I would have not done the thing. I would have not taken the action. So whenever I get myself in which isn't very often to be fair these days, but whenever I hear those types of voices and that type of narrative going on in my head, rather than listening to that as if it's factual and trying to find a solution to it, I just call it out for what it is. And it could be driven from something else. It's generally driven by fear or discomfort, or people get it in relationships when they have an imaginary story in their head and almost like they have this ongoing imaginary, illusionary conversation in their head of having what they're going to say to the partner and what they're going to say back. And actually, if they just go to a deeper level, they go, do you know what, I'm feeling a bit neglected at the moment, or I'm feeling a bit like I'm invisible to you, or I'm feeling jealous of the attention you're giving so-and-so. And it's the willingness to have that level of depth around the honesty when you cut to the chase rather than all the surface level stuff that can derail you and cause conflict very easily.
Yeah, I get that. I think it's quite contradictory for people who are, let's say, waking up or coming into a new world of self-work, because there's a part of us that thinks, oh my God, I'm crazy if I talk to myself. If you see someone walking down the street, you're like, weirdo, like, what is he doing talking to himself? There's another part of you that we've seen in the films and we've seen out there where somebody is talking to themselves and that's the first sign of their craziness. Then there's a part of us that's our ego talking to us. Then there's this other spiritual side where everyone's listen to your higher self. And there's all these voices that everyone can get confused with, because it's very hard to decipher where to listen and kind of where to go with that. But, I've done a lot of journaling. I'm not so much anymore. I'll do it when I really feel called to, but I used to be meticulous with it. And I've got books and books in the other room of non-stop notebooks that I've just written for years. But I feel like I'm all written out now. And now I feel like it's time for me to talk more. But in terms of the way I work with it is I do mirror work. And I taught myself this trick. And it's something that has changed my life in so many ways, is literally sitting in front of the mirror. It's always best naked. I know not everybody likes doing that, but it's always best naked. When you sit in front of the mirror naked, there is nowhere else to go. There's no one else coming in to save you. There's nothing else going on, just you. And there's this part of me, it's not about meditation or lighting candles. You can if you want to. You really don't need to. It's about sitting there and just focusing on yourself. Just focusing on yourself as much as you can. And you'll start to hear versions of yourself that you think you are. So you'll hear, oh my God, I look fat. Or, oh my God, I look ugly. Or, oh my God, I look this. There'll be another side of you that's like, no, you don't. You look absolutely fine. And there's a side of you that's kind of trying to hold you to it. And there's a side that's trying to attack you. And then there's a part of you that's listening to both of those sides, which is your awareness. So there's all of these different sides. But when you're in the mirror, you're concentrating and you're holding that image. You're literally then focusing your eyes, you're sat down, there's no action for you to do. It's just then you can then start to hear this surround sound of crap that's going on in your head sometimes, or lovely stuff, depending on how good you are with that. But it is tricky to be able to sit there naked. I know that not everybody has to do that straight away, but I feel like when you are, there's so much, you speak to yourself far quicker when you've got no clothes on than you do when you've got clothes on. I don't know why, but it's straight in there. You're the first one to criticize yourself. So you get in there a little bit deeper. But obviously you don't have to. I'm not forcing anyone to sit naked in the mirror. So there are different angles of self-work, and there's lots of books out there. There's lots of people that will tell you how to do different kinds of self-work and how you talk to yourself. But I want to ask you guys, when you've done journaling, because this is one thing that I don't know why, but I missed this for so long, but when I first started journaling, I would journal, but I would never reread what I journaled. I'd never go back and read it. I would just journal, shut the page and carry on. Only when someone reminded me and said, do you ever reread your journal? I'm like, no, I don't, because I'm just getting it out at that time. I then went back and started reading. I was like, oh my God, I had all the answers, but I've not been listening to myself, because I'd write down all the answers that I needed, but I never actually do them. I'd just get them out of my head and not take action. So do you guys use the process of, and this is out to, I'll probably go to Sasha first, then back to Julianne, and then back to Angie in that order. Do you guys reread your journals, and how does that benefit you in any way if you do?
Yeah, as I said at the beginning, also, it benefits me in a way that I realize thoughts or patterns, thinking patterns or behavioral patterns that I probably wouldn't realize because I'm so involved in the daily business and in the process of life itself. So I definitely gained some insights from it or some awareness, like, oh, you're doing this again. Not that I have an example right now, but interesting. This is here again. This is here again. So this is somehow a topic which seems to be of importance for part in me or parts in me, but then kind of seem also to hide in everyday life. So it's not really obvious. So, but it's there. At some point, and maybe this is also an interesting impulse. At some point I think in the last year or so, I started to journal in a way that I asked myself a question. So I was starting the journaling process with a question, just out of intuition, and then having one page of answering this question, and this then made this process of kind of looking back, what questions have there been, and was questions popping up again and again, and how may the answers develop over time. That's a very interesting process that I'm kind of made in the last year or so, I would say.
Thank you. And Julianne, what about you?
Yeah, I'm writing diary for all my life, so sometimes I go randomly back or like every end of the year, actually, I go back through all of my entries and look back at it and review and set intentions and everything. What I find really powerful recently is like when I'm in these like states of extreme trigger and then read them back when I'm not triggered anymore. It's basically comedy. and it's so sweet because I actually can just laugh about myself and I'm like, oh my god, that's so cute. And but at the same time also, you know, this self coming in, so I don't just feel shame or I can't believe like the things I thought in my trigger, but also this like other voice coming in, and rereading that is quite, it's quite empowering actually.
I love the fact that you said it's like comedy. I know if I've gone back through some of mine, most of my handwriting I can't read, I'll be honest, because I scribble stuff. But reading stuff back, I go from, oh my God, did I even write that, to, oh my God, I'm so wise. I already knew. Why did I not take my own advice?
Yeah, and it's all within us. All of these
everything's within you, and then you still ignore and you flip it over and you start writing about another problem. It's crazy. Thank you for that, Julianne. Angie, what about yourself? Do you reread your journals? Do you find it useful? What's the benefits?
I do sometimes. I don't do every time. Very similar to you, like I'm done, I've purged, it's out.
Yeah.
But on the occasions when I have reread it, what's been interesting is very similar to what Julianne said, is the whole, when you're triggered or when you're angry or something has come up where you think, right, I just need to get this out, and then you reread it when you're in a good mood and you think, oh like, wow, I really triggered that. So that's interesting. And sometimes, like if I need to purge and I just get it all out, I start rereading it and I get bored, if I'm honest. It's like, God, it's just, I'm rambling on. It's like the same old shit. It's like, okay, that's the same as that page. That's the same as that page. I start skipping a few pages and skimming it. So it felt good at the time, and there's some nuggets in there. But I guess I probably I used to do it religiously, no matter how I felt, I'd journal. I think I got into a bad habit of only using it when I needed it. Mm-hmm. And because these days I don't really need it as much because I'm so much less triggered than as I used to be, then I haven't done it for as long. Well, haven't done it for quite a while actually. So I need to get back into it. So I don't want to use it as just this way to vent. So I don't think that's healthy, because you don't really get a good reflection on anything. It's just a very biased view, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. I feel that for me, the way because I'm always in the mirror, like 24/7 in the mirror. If I could, I'll look at myself in the back of a spoon and start journaling, like, and talking to myself, like, you know, any reflection, car window, whatever it is. And I'm like, oh my God. And I talk to I am one of those people that walks down the street and people are like, she's talking to herself. But now I love it because everybody looks like they've got headphones in. I don't have headphones in. I'm just talking to myself, but I look like I'm talking to someone. But something that I find that my friend Samara, I don't know if Samara's going to watch this at any point. My friend Samara said something to me, because I do a lot of mirror work and I don't think that will ever change. It's something that I do on a daily basis. So I don't believe that I've never dropped that. And I don't know why, I just never have. But journaling, I've been in and out of, and for a long time, I journaled all the time. So I don't feel the need anymore. But Samara said to me, have you done a video diary? And I was just like, no, I haven't. And I thought I'll give it a swirl. So I've got a Vimeo account, and it's actually like a full capacity Vimeo account, and no one sees it. No one's got the details for it, just me. But now every other day I'll do a video journal, and I'll just talk about what I'm going through, the process. And it's kind of so interesting to go back and watch a video of yourself, because you can see the expressions on your face. You can see how you like change mood, and you're like, oh God, yeah. And there's like, I'm one for touching my hair a lot. I kind of just get comfort out of it. And there's so many other reasons for it as well. I'm constantly touching my hair. And then I watch a video, and I'll see when I'm like this and I'm talking and I'm really uncomfortable about what I'm talking, and I don't like looking at the screen, and I can see all the body reactions. And I feel like I'm learning so much more with a video journal than I am with a written. I don't think it's as powerful as what it is in the mirror, but definitely if as I'm watching it back in a different mood, I highly recommend video. Not everyone can afford going to get a Vimeo account, just for that, but I highly recommend it if you can. Go for it and give it a swirl. So I wanted to jump on now. Obviously, we've been talking about how we talk to ourselves. Have any of you shared any of your journals with anyone else? And if so, why? Or would you not dare? Or would you keep it totally private? Sasha, your story.
My story?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I never purposely, I would say, like, handed over my journals and here, have fun with it.
Here's my diary.
No, here's my diary, here's my life. But I need to say that I'm quite, I don't know, relaxed with it. So I don't, so it is here, and it's just everywhere in the house, and I don't make a big thing out of it. And I have a lot of days when I write something down and I feel like, hey, that is really, was really meaningful to me, and I would love not only to have it in there, but also to share it. And what I often do is to share it with my wife, with Maria, or also just to read it out. But other than this, I guess other than her, there is no one that I really shared it with yet.
Okay, cool. Julianne, have you ever shared any of your journal or had that experience?
I was literally just like looking at, because I keep a handwritten journal, and then sometimes online. I was just looking at my notes, finding this like one passage, because there was this extreme, like moment where I felt so embarrassed about it. It's like, but I committed to radical honesty. I don't want to use radical, but I just committed to being honest to myself and honest to the man I'm in a relationship with. And I thought, like, why wouldn't I share this? And I was about to share it, and it just didn't come to it. The moment wasn't that, but I would have been ready for it, because I feel there's a certain amount of like, just like, okay, this is me, you might as well know. And if I just would have found it, I would have maybe just written, read a passage out of it. But
yeah, that's brave. It's brave, isn't it, to do that? You always think, oh God, should have done that. Angie, what about yourself? Have you ever shared your pages?
I haven't necessarily in the sense of like, here's my book, have a read, but I've done something similar, which took equally as much bravery, which I'll just quickly share. So a number of years ago, with a guy that I was seeing at the time, we were both working with a coach in a way to kind of build our relationship more authentically.
Was it the same coach or was it a separate coach?
No, it was my coach, but then he enrolled as well.
Right.
And then the last few sessions, it was focused on actually helping us. I mean, we're not together now, but at the time, the motive was to try and help us, talk more openly, be more like authentic, whatever. But I challenged him at the time, so shall we share our coaching calls and we listen to them together? But obviously when we're having those coaching calls, it's on the basis that it's strictly confidential. So we're not talking in the way that we want our partner to hear us speak like. So we actually shared each other's calls so we could listen to the calls about each other with the same coach. So it was as raw as sharing a diary or sharing a journal, because it was equally as exposing and vulnerable.
That's powerful. That's when you use the word radical, Julianne, that's the radical honesty right there. It's like, oh, that's like a whole hour's worth of therapy. That's impressive.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed. Yeah. And what was it like once you both delivered that? What was the after talk? Was it like, oh, awkward, or was it quite comforting?
I think at the time I was like, look, this is going to be uncomfortable for both of us. So at least let's set some ground rules that whatever it is that we talk about now, it's going to be completely safe. And even if we hear things that we don't like, we're going to hear it with acceptance and without judgment, because the whole purpose of this is to take us to a high level of communication. And if we're going to be angry at each other of what we said, that isn't going to help. So let's just talk about what it was that actually brought us to say those things in the first instance. So it was actually overall, I think it benefited us at the time. It definitely helped us take it to a new level. The problem was it wasn't the issue at the time. It was the sustainability of that way of communicating that I think actually ended up being the thing that broke us up. But at the same time, in that moment, it was actually very powerful.
Yeah, interesting. I think Sasha's got something to add to your sharing.
Yeah, this just reminded me on a very personal experience also, that not like directly related to journaling, but also to I did an exercise which is kind of coming out of the design thinking, designing your life is the book called, and there is like a 5-year plan you do. And you write down what you plan for the next 5 years. One life is kind of you go on with your life and nothing really, kind of you go on with the life you live right now. The second life is you kind of do what you always intended to do but never did. And the third life is a life where money doesn't matter and what others think about you don't matter. And at the time, I was only about to get to know Maria. So it was in the very beginning. Nothing had happened yet, but she was also at the point where she just left her job and there was a lot of opportunity or like options. And I said, hey, why don't you make this exercise? I just did it, and I think it's a great exercise. And so she did it, but we never spoke about it. But we were just about in the beginning and about to start the date, and then we spent some days together, like 10 days, and we always were about, let's share our lives at some point. Knowing only what it was in my life. And so we really were hesitant because I literally wrote down the life that I live now with her, being married, having a child, and so on. And we just spent 10 days together, and then I read out that life, or I kind of show her that life. That was very intense. That was very real, I would say. And I was just reminded to that. The beautiful thing was that her life was matching. And I don't know how it would have been if it's not the case. Probably different reality then, but
that's so cute. I love that. See, this is these guys that are willing to talk about their feelings and share their awkwardness. I love it. Thank you, Sasha. It's been amazing. So it's really interesting sharing things. I've done it myself. I've shared things with people that I've been kind of seeing, not fully in relationships, but had talks about, sharing our journals on a certain day. And it's, for me, it felt very raw, very, very raw, but also there's this refreshing side to it. Like, I love that honesty and that like kind of owning up, and that, and this is why I've got the talkwards. They actually get me really excited. Almost everyone's like, why do you want to talk about that shit? And I'm like, oh my God, I love it. And there's a part of me that's really brave to talk about stuff and go into these places. But there was, I think I was very brave before I was actually experienced enough to do so. So I'd have the guts to be able to do it and then get there and be like, oh my God, I feel like I'm drowning, because I didn't really have the language to be able to survive survive those conversations. So there is a level of being ready for the awkwardness, as well as being able to communicate how you really feel and making sure you've got the safety of each other to be in that, that you aren't kind of rip each other's hair out afterwards. You're like, no, this is a safe space to go into and to share. So thank you very much for that. So we are now going to move on to kind of more about speaking and allowing other people to speak, because we are living in the craziest time. I've said this near every show. The world is slightly bonkers, and everyone's got a different opinion. Whether you want to talk about vaccines or politicians, or whether you want to talk about the lockdown, or whether you want to talk about whether you can travel or not, or whether you should be traveling or not. We're talking about so many different aspects, and it's dividing so many families, so many couples, so many different, people out there. And I watched an interesting 20-minute show for Russell Brand today, and he was talking about the conversations that's been happening around everyone's getting divorces now. So there's lots of online divorces and there's Zoom divorces, and he was really kind of just showcasing how sad that was, having a divorce on Zoom, and really like, what does that mean for our society? We don't really have any other options at the moment, but there's a lot of things breaking down, and we're finding it very hard to share how we really feel because of the difference of opinion from someone else. And everything seems now like no one really, I'm going to say not no one cares, but everyone's at the last tether. So everyone's like, at the last kind of pushing point. So if you do say something that someone doesn't agree with now, it's like they don't have any problems in telling you how they really feel. They're willing to just let rip because they've had enough. So it's always kind of this aggravation. So can you guys pinpoint anything? I'll start with Julianne. Can you pinpoint anything where you've had confrontation, or you've either been in around that, or you felt that kind of intense confrontation during this lockdown period, and kind of how that's left you feeling, or how it's kind of been for you in this heightened sensitivity that we're currently living in, if you wouldn't mind sharing?
Interesting. Maybe I'm not the person you get like some juicy material out of, because I stay away from it, and I also feel there's a sense like I'm very able to hold my opinion and someone else's complete contradictory opinion, and it was quite a journey to get there, that I don't have to be right. Charlie Chaplin says, ever since I'm stopped being right of the time, I'm wrong less of the time. And yeah, to just be able to hold different truths for different people. Mm-hmm. And then I also sometimes wonder when someone wants to be right, it's like, are we still in a discussion here, or is it just about you wanting to be right? And then I wonder, why do you want to be right? Like, what's actually the thing behind the thing, what's going on for you emotionally? Because often it comes out in these like really electric Facebook comments and just like fights. Like, is that really your topic, or is there something underneath? What's your fear? Like, what is the fear that's motivating this, like, really this talk? So yeah.
That's actually quite an interesting perspective. I like that. That's a good answer. So yes, that was juicy. Thank you, Julianne. Sasha, have you been a part of any confrontation? If you haven't, have you seen any?
Yeah, I mean, I would almost go with Juliane in a way that I would say I didn't really interfere, or I didn't really have a lot of confrontation, because I think my energy and my time feels too valuable to me, and there is a lot of noise out there. And I'm also very little interested in the noise and more interested in the underlying feelings, emotions, energies that are there. Mm-hmm. And I think the closest that I experience, anything related to the whole pandemic or issues around that, is really also in the family, or even with Maria. In my relationship, where I would say on her side, or also in the family, I would say there is much more fear related to the virus than I carry within me. So what I can do is I respect it to a certain level, and I draw boundaries when I say, okay, that's actually very irrational what you're doing here, and I'm not willing to do that. So this is probably my answer to that question. So not interested in too much noise, really.
Understood. And do you feel more within yourself now? Do you feel kind of that you're able to, because the world's getting crazier and crazier and things are getting more heightened. Has it been always easy for you to do that? Or did it start off a little bit volatile and you had to make that decision to step out of it?
Both, almost, I would say. So I think I'm from the beginning on, or I would say I'm very grounded within myself. So I would say it takes quite a bit to get me out of the center. I mean, obviously the overall experience and the overall trauma which is going on has an effect, but an effect maybe which then leads to, okay, actually, you know what, I can't take much more, or I don't want to take much more, I'm not willing to. So I'm very willing to listen to your fears. I'm very willing to listen to what's actually there, to hold space. But I don't need to have a discussion about what's right or wrong, because I don't think so much in that terms, actually, I would say.
Cool. Thank you. And Angie, what about yourself?
What was a specific question? I feel there's been a lot.
In terms of like confrontation and stuff that we've got going on at the moment, and have you had any experiences of that? How have you felt around that, and what's been happening for you in that confrontational world's going to shit angle?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, I don't get into the detail, obviously, in this call, but you and I have spoken about it in depth, Nat, so I think I know what I'm talking about. But I think for me, I watched a podcast of yours with Mark Devlin once, and he said something that was just so clear and correct when he said that with the stuff, if you're willing to look into it, so I'm just going to say it, if you're willing to look into it, and then you see something that you believe to be true that millions of people have, you go through an entire cycle of, oh my God, I can't believe this has been going on. You go through depression, you go through anger, you go through fear, you go through elation, all this like an emotional roller coaster. And then nearly everybody's immediate reaction is, I have to tell everybody because everybody needs to know this. And then you realize that actually it doesn't go anywhere because people are either with you or they're not. So I definitely went through that thread and I was like, listen, I need to tell you this thing. It's so important. And then it just stopped working. But then you and I met and we were like, yeah, we're on the same page. Okay. So then it's very interesting how some friendships develop because of this type of thing. And similarly, you start approaching other relationships in a different way. Now, I'm at a place now that I'm very settled with everything. And I truly believe whatever I believe. And I believe one day that will come out, but that's another story. But my point is, I think where I get frustrated with it in terms of any conflict is when it has to be a mutual respect for both sides. So I respect why some people might not see something that I see because they've read a different narrative. And I understand that. It's when an alternative opinion to their narrative is criticized and shamed without having even looked at it. So I feel that that's when it gets very difficult to be on the receiving end of that, when somebody basically says, like, if you said to me, I'm going to make it up, you said jelly beans are really sweet, and I was like, no, they are not, they're really salty, but I've never eaten a jelly bean. It would be really frustrating for you to know I've eaten jelly beans and they're definitely sweet. I was like, no, they're salty. But then at the same time, if you tasted salty jelly beans on another occasion, you'd understand why that person would have that opinion. But then having not even been willing to look at your side, that's when the conflict arises. So it's not about, and I think Julianne made a really good point, when this conflict starts, it can feud because it starts being about the thing, and it starts being about, oh my God, what you're telling me is scaring me. And if I either have to go there with you, which I'm shit scared of, or I just have to shame you in the way that you will shut up and you will look foolish and you will be criticized and you will be belittled, But actually, when it doesn't matter if people are there with you or not, it's how people approach it. And as long as people are approaching a differing opinion with respect, it can just be left there. And you just have to stop talking about it. Otherwise, you will end up in conflict. It's when one side is so willing to disrespect the other without even having looked at it. That's probably a trigger of mine. But I've learned to manage that in a way of like, okay, they just see it differently, and I just have to accept it. And something that I heard somebody say is, what would love do? And it's one of the most powerful questions of, rather than trying to challenge all the thinking about it and all the detail around it, is like, how can I respond with love? Which is opposite of often how this stuff is portrayed. But at the same time, it's actually all about kindness and being connected with each other, and gentleness, and the opposite of what people think. So I have to apply that if I get any form of response. And just to answer your question as well, I don't go around anymore saying stuff proactively to people. I did at the beginning, so it's like, oh my God, everybody needs to know this, and I've stopped. I just don't.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I find it very hard for some people to be, jelly beans are definitely salty. There's no sweet jelly beans in the world. And I'm sat there going, good, don't say anything. It's so hard. Which is when I tend to kind of go, I'm not sure I agree on that, but we're just going to have to leave it there. I just say, I'm not going to sit here and agree with something I don't agree with and have you say really bad things about really bad things. But at the same time, I'm not going to have an argument with you either. And that's how I offer this respect in a situation about all the stuff that's going on in the world at the moment.
No, I appreciate that. It's been a very strange time for a lot of people. For me, and I've said this a number of times, I am totally amazed by how many spiritual, personal development therapists, all the works that are truly here for love and light, have an impressive amount of anger toward individual characters during this time. I feel like what we're going through right now has tested everybody's ability to be able to communicate, to be able to hold information, to be able to hold judgments. And, some people out there that and I say this all the time, what would love do? So people have said to me, oh, what do you think of Trump? And I'm like, never met him. Oh, but don't you hate him for this and that? Never met him. Not going to hate a man on the other side of the planet that I've never met. Sorry, this is never going to go anywhere, no matter what you want me to think. The same for if you're talking about QAnon or all these crazy things that people are talking about, and they're saying, oh, well, is this? And I'm like, do you know what? I've looked into that from the very, very beginning that happened. And I saw lots of things that happened, and I was reading all the drops that were going on. Never once have I seen QAnon incite hate, but do I believe it its entirety? No, I don't. I'm impartial. I've looked at it myself. But when you tell other people, they think because they've read the news or they've looked into it that there's all this hate incitement and there's all this anger. And it's like, you don't know enough because you haven't looked enough. So for me, the way I look at it is, people can say, oh, I've looked at that, I know. Unless you're looking at this stuff every day, you'll never know, because the news changes every day, all the time. So if you looked at it back in 2017 and you think you can judge it in 2021, you've got another thing coming. But we like to stick with decisions that we've made because they feel comfortable to us. So it's been really interesting for me, because obviously everybody's known that I've been really interested in alternative theories, conspiracy theories, looking at different tech, leading tech. I've had a business in a technology that revolutionized how we deal with oil and fuel, and it was basically poo-pooed and you can't bring this out, and we got pushed to one side. And I had that personal experience. Now, somebody else would call that a conspiracy, that there isn't a hidden agenda, but I've been sat there with a product that reduces carbon emissions, and I've been on the receiving end of that. So my mind has been open because of personal experience. So I tend to look at things now, and I've really enjoyed conversations over this period about communication, because some of the greatest minds miss the blindingly obvious information. That's also another problem that we have, is the more intellectual you are doesn't mean that you have any more common sense than anyone else. A lot of the time, actually, like Einstein says, imagination is far more important than intelligence and intellect. And we've got this space now where I think everybody's entitled to their opinion, but we all want to say it at the same time, and we all want to say it as loud as each other, because we've never been taught how to communicate before. And it is all down to communication. It's how do you deliver what you found out that day? If you're going to deliver that you found out that a bunch of aliens might live on the backside of the moon, and you want people to listen to you, shouting that is probably not going to be a way that people want to take that information on. But if you found out something that's devastating about vaccinations, and you want somebody to understand and to listen and to read the article, again, you shouting that is not going to get someone to want to read it. And this is the problem that we have, is we have some quite horrible news lately at the moment in every area that we look in. It's our delivery, it's our effective way of delivering that news. Because nobody wants to open the papers. When they open the papers and you just see all the headlines and you see how harsh some of these headlines are. Some of these global bullying campaigns on individuals around the world. I saw something the other day where it was a young girl. I don't know what her name is, but she's a not young influencer, and she went to Dubai.
Gretna? Was it Gretna?
I don't know. She's a young influencer. No, she's an influencer more of in like a gym sports influencer. And she went over to Dubai for to get away. And I read one of the news articles around her, and the way that they went into this girl, if they were in a school, they'd be done for bullying. But this was a mainstream news article having a go at how she'd left the country, how dare she, and made an object of her. So I think a lot of our news is we get led with communication. We get led by the news of how we communicate with each other, and it's quite a shame. But if, a lot of the stuff out there, cutting off from conspiracies and cutting off from that story, it's what we're communicating and why we're communicating it. Like you were saying, Julianne, it's really interesting, and both of you, Sasha as well. It's interesting to see why someone's holding on to that information so much, because is it about the news, like you said, or is it about being right? And when you're trying to be right, it's a whole different story, because there's this kind of, it's always coming from a trauma in the back. It's always coming from somewhere in the past where they feel that need to be right all the time, and it's about winning. And I don't think we don't want to win any of these arguments that are out there at the moment. I don't think there's anything that we can win that would be great in terms of us sharing at the moment. There's nothing that positive, but it is a tricky one. So is there a way, before we kind of curve it for the last 10 minutes, though, you guys you're experienced in communication, you've done your own workshops and facilitated things. What would be the 3 things that you think would be, if somebody had information, regardless of what that is, whether it's bad news or something quite tragic, or it's something that they need to share about that's a bit vulnerable about themselves, what would be the 3 things you think that they should do before they share that information? Or what 3 things should they look out before they go and use that information with someone else? So like a step-by-step. Julianne, we'll start with you. If you can give 3 tips for good communication.
Yeah, I would say the first one is actually listening. Listening is really the number one. What is the other person actually saying? And really giving someone our full presence. And that means like turning off this inner commentator and being self-reflective enough to know when we're triggered and then we're responding after trigger. And there's these studies, it's like NVC, nonviolent communication. Marshall Rosenberg is really essential reading for good communication. It might seem a bit rigid, but it's so important to read that. And they say that in work situations, when they do negotiations, when they ask the listener to actually repeat back what they heard, they come to an agreement 50% quicker than if they just march on. So often we just want to hear what we hear, and it's not even the words that actually hurt us. It's actually our thoughts that are going in us, within us, that hurt us. Often silence and just like having a breather and not responding immediately, really taking your time. And then taking responsibility for oneself. So it's not like that I'm responsible to something, but it takes 2 to tango. So whenever there's a conflict, the knowledge that like both people have contributed to this, and first of all reflecting on what have I contributed to this. And often if I say that, okay, cool, I hear you, and I feel this and this, it's so much easier for the other person and also say, okay, cool, and I feel I've done this. That's a very short version that could be going on forever. But I'd love to hear from Angie and Sasha.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. And it's, listening is the first one. I think you both all agree. But Sasha, go for it. Your top 3 things that you think someone could either take into consideration or that could remember as they're going into a difficult altercation of some kind?
Yeah, I would also go with active listening. Like really understand, first of all, where the other person stands. First of all, what is kind of the reality? What is their map of the world, so to say? And yeah, then also kind of via this find out where is maybe common ground. So why could my message be of value even for the other person? This would be something you could find out with that active listening. I liked, Juliana, what you said about maybe not like immediate reaction, but also let things think in and maybe chew on things for a bit and be with some information or to get new perspectives on it also. Yeah, I even don't know if I have so much more to add in a way to what Juliana said, because I think this is really essential, and this is really also how I would say it, about the radical responsibility, about really understanding what is going on inside of me, what is going on inside of the other, and reflecting on it. And really also not maybe only sharing kind of the information, but also sharing what this information does with you and what this information does within you, so you can get the other person a better understanding of why this might be of value to listen to, or why this is important for you, why this might be important for her. This direction.
Perfect. Thank you. You two think very similarly, I've noticed, Juliana and Sashi.
Yeah, somehow, yeah.
I like it. You can have your own show if you want. I've told Juliana she's ready for her own show. So, Angie, what about yourself? What would be the 3 things for you that you think are important, or kind of steps that someone could follow?
God, it's such a big question for 3 things, Nat. It's like the hardest thing ever.
I know, sorry, I could say 5, but I'm just trying to...
Well, I could say listening again, but everybody's said that, which is a very valid point. I think the urge to interrupt, particularly when you're in conflict, is very high, and having the skill just to give that person the space creates a safe space in order to communicate. But for me, one of the biggest things is like drop the blame. Like, a lot of people hold other people responsible for how they feel. So you made me angry, or you did this and now I'm pissed off, kind of thing. So there's a very big blame game, particularly in conflict with people. And when you can step away from that, and even that use of language. So, and I used to be guilty of this until I got into coaching myself. But for example, if somebody's on the phone, to say to them, "You're not listening to me," is quite accusational and quite abrupt and quite blamey, as opposed to, when I see you in your phone, I interpret that I'm not being listened to. And that's a completely different message. It's exactly the same thing, but it's delivered in a way that is much more likely to be received, because it's coming from how you interpret it rather than stating something as fact, because that person might have something else going on the phone. So that's the second big thing, is learning to communicate from a place of authenticity and interpretation, as opposed to factual and blame, kind of like the blame show. And I think finally is connecting with what people's motives are. So often we see a behavior, or we see something that we're not comfortable with, and people then make an accusation about that as well. But actually, if you can dig a little bit deeper, the motive might have been well placed. So even, and again, I'm not, just to give this an example, because I saw it a couple of months ago, I saw a big debate going on Facebook around taking the vaccine or getting vaccinated and getting your children vaccinated. And both sides were getting really angry at the other person around, do you effing research, and you haven't got an effing clue what you're on about, and oh my God, and sharing links, trying to force it down each other's throats, kind of thing. But I put a comment at the bottom, and it kind of became a bit of a tumbleweed moment. And then the lady pulled it off Facebook and messaged me privately saying, I think we needed that. Because I just put, look, if you just step away from all this anger and this judgment and everything that's going on, underneath both narratives and underneath both sides of what everybody's saying is that they're actually coming from a place of love and care. Yeah. Because everybody's saying, one side is saying, take the vaccine because it will protect me and it will protect my family because I love them and I love me. And the other side is saying, don't take the vaccine because it will hurt you. So I'm coming from a place of love.
Yeah.
So actually, if you take it for a place of values, then it becomes less friction in terms of what's actually coming out of the mouth, because you can connect with what their motivation and their intention is of why they're saying what they're saying, which is similar to the truth community, and it's similar to anything when you have a debate with somebody. So it's when you kind of can tap into that, and also when you tap into something where you can dig a little bit deeper if the motive was actually not well intended, then you've got another conversation on your hand. But if you just get stuck on the words, you miss the deeper motivation. So tapping into that when you're in debate with somebody or communicating with somebody, like if somebody said, making this up, but if a partner said to another partner, I'm finding other people attractive, you could say, oh my God, you could freak out about the words. But actually, if their motive was because I want to stay with you, I want to fix it, we're obviously not connecting in the way that we used to, the motive was well placed. But if the motive was, oh yeah, they're because you're really fat and they're really skinny and it's a place to actually like derail and upset the other person, then it's a completely different motive. So working out what somebody's intention is in what they're saying is a very good way to avoid negative feeling and actually creating more safety and authentic communication.
Yeah, that was amazing. So that was definitely a good roundup of that. I'm going to add something to it as well, like a couple of things. One of the big things that I learn with myself is sharing information. Is it the right time? Very, very simple. I could storm into a room and be like, hey, look what I've just found. If it's not the right time, it's not going to listen. So now I have this thing where I'm like, hey, I wanted to talk to you about XXX. Is this the right time? But if I, only if it's like something that's quite trauma, if it's just like something I'm going to ask about, say, hey, I just want to have a quick chat with you. You okay? I'm not going to go introduce the entire subject because it's not needed. But if it's something that I know is going to require a long amount of time, it's not just a quick question to a mate, if it's not just something that you just want to know a quick answer to, if it's something that's going to require them to have a deep response or something that's going to require both of you to come together in a different way, find the right time. Then let them know what you want to talk to about, and always do it face to face if you can. Never like this whole kind of voice notes and texting and stuff and calls. It's okay, but if you can do a face to face, you get to see the expressions, you can see the response on someone. Hiding behind these things isn't going to work with your communication. It might make it feel easier because you don't really like to communicate, and you're like, oh God, it's easier if I just voice note, or it's easier if I just drop a text message. That's not effective communication. Effective communication is where you can see the person's face and you let them know what you want to talk about, and you can have that chat there and then. And you know that they're going to know that this is going to take half an hour of my time, rather than you going, hey, I want to ask you something now, and they're going out in 10. That really isn't the best form of a connection there. So I loved your answers today, and we've gone deep into the kind of how we have a conversation with ourselves and how we introduce those conversations with other people. And this is real communication. It doesn't get much more real than this. Obviously, it can get more intimate than this when it's really awkward with another person. But in terms of 3 ideas there from different people of how we introduce information, I think we've covered it. And I want to thank you all very much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
That was great. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, it's good.
Thanks, guys.
So for anyone that's at home, just to let you know, so I have slightly changed my schedule. I'm going 3 days a week. So it's Tuesday, Wednesdays, Thursdays, every week from now on. I'm not going to do every night because I've got Clubhouse app, and I'm going to be going on there as well, doing other content on a different platform. So I am changing it slightly, but most of the content now is going to be on I Am Sound TV. My Nat Rich channel is going to be for other content that I'm doing. So I won't be streaming live to there every single night. I will be going live to I Am Sound TV 3 times a week. And the other one will be for as I play around the different things. I don't know when we've got any of you guys back, but I am working on booking everyone else back in. I've got more subjects coming up, so I will let you guys know. For anyone that's at home, thank you very much for watching. You guys stay there. Everyone at home, we will see you tomorrow at 7 o'clock. We've got apologies and forgiveness and how to truly forgive yourself and others, which is going to be quite a good one. But we'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.